Most people wait for retirement to slow down. The wise prepare for it by speeding up their thinking. The truth is simple and uncomfortable. The assets you ignore in your working years become the regrets you carry into retirement. The market doesn't punish bad intentions, it punishes bad preparation. And the next few years will quietly decide whether your retirement is built on confidence or on hope. Let me begin with a simple observation. Most people think retirement is a finish line. In reality, it's a mirror. It reflects the decisions you made quietly, consistently, and sometimes painfully over decades. The market doesn't suddenly become kind or cruel when you retire. It simply reveals whether you prepared with patience or chased comfort. If you're still working, you have something more valuable than money. You have time, and time, when paired with the right assets, does something extraordinary. It forgives small mistakes, it rewards discipline, and it turns ordinary decisions into life-changing outcomes. Now, when people hear the word assets, they often think of excitement, hot trends, fast gains, complicated strategies. But retirement doesn't reward excitement, it rewards endurance. The goal before retirement is not to look smart, it's to sleep well. And that only happens when what you own is understandable, resilient, and quietly productive. The first asset to secure before retirement is ownership in strong, cash-generating businesses. Not stories, not promises, real businesses that sell essential products, earn consistently, and reward owners year after year. These are businesses that don't need perfect economic conditions to survive. They just need time. When you own them, you stop worrying about daily headlines because their value is built on human behavior that rarely changes. The second asset is productive real assets, not speculation, not leverage, but property or resources that generate steady income and hold real utility. Inflation can erode paper promises, but it struggles against assets people need to live and work. Over time, these assets don't just preserve purchasing power, they quietly strengthen it. The third asset is long-term compounding vehicles. Simple, diversified ownership that captures the progress of human productivity. You don't need brilliance here, you need consistency. Small contributions left alone can outperform heroic decisions made too late. Compounding doesn't announce itself loudly. It works in silence, and then suddenly it speaks very clearly. The fourth asset is personal capability. Skills, reputation, and judgment are assets that don't show up on a balance sheet, but they determine how long you can earn, adapt, and stay relevant. Before retirement, your mind should be appreciating, not depreciating. The ability to think independently and act rationally is one of the most valuable assets you can own, especially when others are panicking. And finally, the most overlooked asset of all, liquidity with purpose. Cash is not idle when it's waiting for opportunity. It's patience in physical form. Having reserves before retirement means you are never forced to sell at the wrong time. It gives you control. And in investing, control is often the difference between survival and success. As retirement approaches, the question changes. It's no longer how much can I make? It becomes what can I own that will take care of me when I step back? The answer is rarely found in complexity. It's found in discipline, clarity, and the courage to choose boring over brilliant. You don't need to predict the market. You need to position yourself so that no matter what happens, time remains on your side. Buy assets that respect your future self. Because one day, sooner than you think, you'll stop working for money, and you'll discover whether your money learned how to work for you. Retirement is often misunderstood because many people believe it is funded by the final chapter of their working life. They assume that if they earn enough in the last 10 or 15 years, everything will somehow work out. But income, no matter how high, has one unavoidable weakness: it stops. Ownership, on the other hand, keeps going. Retirement is not sustained by the hours you once worked, but by the assets you chose to own long before you stopped working. Income is active. It depends on your health, your energy, your job, and the market's demand for your skills. Ownership is passive. It does not care whether you wake up early or take the day off. When you retire, the shift is dramatic. You move from a life powered by effort to a life supported by structure. And structure comes from ownership that was built patiently over time. The most powerful feature of ownership is compounding. Compounding is often described in numbers, but its true strength is behavioral. It rewards those who can wait, who resist the urge to interrupt progress, and who allow time to do the heavy lifting. Compounding doesn't require genius, it requires endurance. Small, sensible decisions made consistently tend to outperform brilliant decisions made occasionally. Quiet compounding rarely looks impressive in the early years. In fact, it often feels disappointing. The progress is slow, and the results seem modest. This is where most people give up. They compare their steady ownership to someone else's sudden gain and feel left behind. But compounding is not a race. It is a process. And the people who stay in the process are the ones who eventually benefit from it. As retirement approaches, the difference between income and ownership becomes impossible to ignore. Income is something you must defend. You negotiate for it. You compete for it. You worry about losing it. Ownership, once established, requires far less maintenance. A well-chosen asset doesn't ask for daily decisions. It simply performs. That performance, repeated year after year, becomes the foundation of financial independence. Many people underestimate how early ownership must begin to matter. They believe they can start late and compensate by earning more. In reality, time is the one input you cannot replace. $1 owned early and left untouched can be more valuable than $10 earned late and spent quickly. This is not because of luck or timing, but because compounding magnifies patience. Ownership also changes how you experience the market. When your future depends only on income, every economic downturn feels personal and threatening. But when you own productive assets, volatility becomes less frightening. You begin to think in years instead of weeks. You stop asking what the market will do tomorrow and start asking what your assets will produce over decades. There is also a psychological shift that ownership brings. It moves you from consumption to participation. Instead of being someone who only spends, you become someone who benefits from growth, productivity, and progress. This mindset matters deeply in retirement. People who rely solely on income often feel anxious about spending. People who rely on ownership tend to feel more confident because their assets are designed to replenish themselves. Quiet compounding is especially important because it aligns with how real life unfolds. Careers are unpredictable, health changes, responsibilities shift, but assets that compound quietly do not require perfect conditions. They adapt, they grow through different economic environments provided they are chosen with care and held with discipline. Retirement funded by ownership is also more flexible. Income usually arrives on a schedule and stops abruptly. Ownership can be adjusted, diversified, and partially accessed when needed. It gives you options, and in retirement, options are more valuable than maximum returns. The ability to respond calmly to change is often what separates a comfortable retirement from a stressful one. It is important to understand that ownership does not mean complexity. In fact, the most effective compounding often comes from simple structures, clear businesses, diversified long-term holdings, and real assets that serve basic human needs tend to outperform complicated strategies over time. Simplicity reduces mistakes, and fewer mistakes allow compounding to continue uninterrupted. One of the greatest enemies of quiet compounding is impatience. People interrupt the process by chasing what is new, exciting, or fashionable. Each interruption resets the clock. Ownership needs time, not attention. The less you interfere, the more it works. This is why the best retirement outcomes often belong to those who appeared inactive but were actually consistent. As you get closer to retirement, the question becomes more focused. It is no longer about how fast you can grow, but how reliably your ownership can support your life. Assets that compound quietly are not designed to impress others. They are designed to serve you. They generate income, preserve purchasing power, and reduce dependence on unpredictable external factors. Ultimately, retirement funded by ownership is about dignity. It allows you to live without constantly calculating how long your money will last. It allows you to make decisions based on values rather than fear. And it allows you to enjoy the freedom that retirement promises, but income alone can never guarantee. Income may open each door to retirement, but ownership keeps it open. Those who understand this early enough do not rush at the end. They arrive prepared, supported by years of quiet compounding that worked patiently while they were busy living their lives. The safest future is not built on effort alone, because effort eventually fades. It is built on foresight, the ability to recognize that there will come a time when you no longer want to work as hard, move as fast, or think about money as often. That moment is not a weakness, it is a natural stage of life. And the people who navigate it best are those who prepared for it by buying assets that continue to work when they choose not to. Most careers are demanding. They ask for energy, attention, and constant adjustment. Early in life, this feels manageable, even exciting. But over time, priorities change. Health becomes more valuable than overtime. Freedom becomes more attractive than promotion. When that shift happens, income tied directly to effort becomes fragile. Assets, by contrast, do not get tired. They do not need motivation. They continue to function whether you are ambitious or at rest. This is where the idea of safety in the future is often misunderstood. Many people think safety comes from high income, job security, or advanced skills. While those are valuable, they are temporary. The safest future comes from ownership, owning things that produce value independently of your daily involvement. When you own such assets, your future is not dependent on your ability to keep running. It is supported by systems you built when you had the strength and time to do so. Assets that work without you are powerful because they shift your role. Instead of being the engine, you become the beneficiary. Instead of trading time for money, you allow money to generate time. This transition is subtle, but profound. It reduces stress, it increases choice, and it creates resilience against life's unpredictability. Consider the difference between a job and a productive asset. A job pays as long as you show up and perform. Miss enough days, and the income disappears. A productive asset, if chosen wisely, continues to generate value even during periods of inactivity. It does not depend on your mood, your schedule, or your energy. This independence is what makes such assets the foundation of a safe future. Another advantage of assets that keep working is that they protect you from forced decisions. When all income depends on effort, every disruption feels urgent. A market downturn, a health issue, or a personal obligation can push people into poor choices. But when you own assets that continue to perform, you gain the luxury of patience. You can wait, you can choose, and patience is one of the most underrated forms of financial strength. These assets also align with how life actually unfolds. No one works at full capacity forever. Interests change. Responsibilities shift. Energy levels fluctuate. Assets that work without your constant input adapt to these changes more gracefully than income streams that demand full attention. They create continuity when life becomes fragmented. It is important to note that assets which work for you are not necessarily complex or risky. In fact, the most reliable ones are often simple and familiar. They are built around enduring human needs and behaviors. They may not offer excitement, but they offer dependability. Over time, dependability compounds into security. There is also a psychological benefit to owning assets that function independently. It changes how you relate to work. Work becomes a choice rather than a necessity. You engage in it because you find meaning, not because you fear stopping. This shift improves decision-making. People who are not desperate tend to thin more clearly, negotiate better, and act more rationally. As retirement approaches, this distinction becomes even more important. At that stage, the goal is not to maximize output, but to minimize vulnerability. Assets that keep working reduce exposure to single points of failure. They provide multiple streams of support rather than one fragile source. This diversification of effort into ownership is what stabilizes the future. A safe future also requires protection against inflation and uncertainty. Assets that work independently often have the ability to adjust over time. They can grow, adapt, and maintain relevance in changing environments. Income fixed to effort, by contrast, often struggles to keep pace once active work slows. Perhaps the greatest advantage of these assets is that they give you back your time. Time is the one resource that becomes more precious as it becomes more limited. Assets that continue to work allow you to spend time where it matters most, on health, family, learning, and rest. They support a life that is balanced, not just productive. Building such a future does not happen overnight. It requires early intention, steady action, and the discipline to favor long-term reliability over short-term excitement. It requires resisting the temptation to consume today what could support you tomorrow. But the reward for this discipline is immense. In the end, the safest future is not one where you never face challenges. It is one where challenges do not threaten your stability. By buying assets that continue to work when you no longer want to, you create a future that is flexible, resilient, and calm. You build a life where money supports your freedom, rather than demanding your constant attention. And that, more than any number on a statement, is what true security looks like. The greatest risk before retirement is often misunderstood. Many PEO believe it is market volatility, the daily ups and downs, the headlines, the uncertainty. They watch charts, fear corrections, and delay decisions because they are trying to avoid temporary discomfort. But volatility is visible, loud, and emotional. The more dangerous risk is quiet and easily ignored, reaching retirement owning too little of what truly endures. Volatility feels threatening because it is immediate. You can see it, you can measure it, you can react to it. Endurance, on the other hand, unfolds slowly. It does not announce itself with urgency. Assets that endure often appear boring, predictable, and unimpressive in the short term. Because of this, many people postpone owning them, assuming there will be time later. That delay is far more damaging than any market fluctuation. Before retirement, time is your greatest advantage. Volatility becomes less harmful when time is on your side. Markets move up and down, but enduring assets tend to move forward over long periods. When you own too little of them, you are not exposed to risk. You are exposed to fragility. Your future becomes dependent on perfect timing, steady income, and favorable conditions. Life rarely offers all three at once. Enduring assets share common characteristics. They are built around fundamental human needs. They generate value repeatedly, not just once. They remain relevant across economic cycles. These assets do not require constant reinvention to survive. When you own them, you benefit from stability that persists even when conditions change. The danger of owning too little of what endures often comes from overconfidence in short-term success. During working years, income can mask poor ownership decisions. A strong paycheck creates the illusion of progress, even if little is being converted into lasting value. Consumption increases, lifestyle expands, and ownership lags behind. B. The time retirement approaches, the gap becomes visible and difficult to close. Market volatility, while uncomfortable, is usually temporary. It tests patience, not strategy. Owning too little of enduring assets is permanent. It cannot be corrected quickly. You cannot compress decades of compounding into a few remaining years without taking excessive risk. This is why the real danger is not fluctuation, but under-ownership. Another reason this risk is underestimated is psychological. Volatility triggers fear, which leads to action. Under-ownership feels calm, so it goes unnoticed. There is no alarm when you fail to buy something enduring. There is no warning sign when you prioritize convenience over consistency. The consequences only appear later when options are limited. Enduring assets also provide resilience beyond financial returns. They offer emotional stability. When you own assets that have survived multiple cycles, you are less likely to panic during temporary downturns. You develop confidence rooted in structure rather than speculation. This calm allows better decisions, which further improves long-term outcomes. Before retirement, the focus should shift from avoiding losses to securing continuity. Volatility does not break continuity. Poor preparation does. Enduring assets are designed to function across different environments. They may slow down, but they rarely disappear. This persistence is what supports a sustainable retirement. There is also a compounding effect to endurance itself. Assets that last long enough accumulate advantages. They build reputations, efficiencies, and resilience over time. Owning them early allows you to participate in this compounding durability. Waiting too long means missing not just returns but stability. Many people attempt to reduce risk by holding back, staying in cash, or waiting for certainty. In reality, certainty never arrives. By waiting, they reduce exposure to volatility but increase exposure to erosion of purchasing power, opportunity, and time. The risk they fear is not the risk that harms them. As retirement nears, the consequences of under-ownership become clearer. Income becomes uncertain, flexibility decreases, and mistakes become more costly. At that point, the question is no longer how much risk you can tolerate, but how much resilience you have built. Resilience comes from enduring ownership, not from avoiding temporary discomfort. Owning what endures also aligns with a more peaceful approach to money. It reduces the need to monitor constantly. It allows you to think in decades rather than days. This long view is essential for retirement planning, where the goal is not excitement but reliability. The greatest risk, then, is not the market's behavior, but your own delay in securing what lasts. Volatility will come and go regardless of your actions. Enduring assets require deliberate choice. They must be accumulated intentionally, patiently, and consistently. In the end, retirement does not fail because markets fluctuate. It fails because people arrive without enough ownership in things that continue to matter. By focusing less on avoiding volatility and more on owning what endures, you shift from fear-based decisions to foundation-based planning. And that shift is what turns uncertainty into confidence as you approach the later stages of life.